this topic here has been something that we have been trying to bring into our conversations the last 3 events, and I haven't been able to do it the way I wanted, simply because of time. And, this is something that is very dear to me because as a small business consultant, I have been focused on in the last decade, I have focused on working with small businesses to help them become large businesses. I have worked on helping startups to be able to become sustainable businesses that thrive, not just survive. And over that time, there's some things that I have come to learn and get exposed to, and some things that I've experienced myself as a business owner. So I want to dive into this, and let's go to the next slide. All right. What you see here is an infographic on the left that basically gives you an overview, a helicopter view of the entire cannabis industry. If you could look at the most utopian cannabis industry, what you see here represents the entire industry. Okay. Now, what you see in terms of, if you guys can see my cursor right there, what you see here and here, these are all different businesses that you all have a chance to get into when licensing opens up. But I'm not going to get too deep into this because we covered this last time, and I actually did a training on this. And if you go to our YouTube channel, there's about a 15 to 20 minute long training where we go in depth talking about the different parts of the industry. You can go check that out. But I have this up here because I want you all to understand what this represents and what you see up here and these businesses. We're saying distribution, cultivation, manufacturing, testing, retail. Those are what we're going to refer to as top tier, meaning that's the top tier, not like the best, but that would be like the top business in that vertical. Meaning that this cultivation facility is going to be required to get a cannabis grow license from the state of Virginia when that time comes. But underneath that cultivation farm or that hydroponic grow facility, there are going to be about a dozen other businesses underneath that will support that business and keep that business functioning. Now, those underlying businesses under cultivators and manufacturers and so forth, all of those businesses have a 6 to 7 figure opportunity attached to them if you can do business well and do business right. And so I'm sharing this because I want you guys to understand that not everyone that becomes successful in cannabis owns a dispensary or owns a grow farm. Those are just what have been glamorized on television shows and movies, and that's all people have really been exposed to. But those are also the most capital-heavy ways to enter the industry, and you'll hear a lot about that today from some people that have done that. So let's go ahead and talk about getting prepared. And I'm sharing this. So let's talk about number one. We're supposed to do one at a time. What just happened? So the thing I want you guys to understand is when I'm talking about number one, once you commit to achieving success, then prepare your family for the journey only if you're committed to success. Why am I saying this way? Because most people punk out. I'm going to be real with you. I have seen people make money, make 6 figures, and because they didn't want to put forth the effort to sustain what they had to do to make the 6 figures, they just chose to walk away. And you're probably saying, no, Paul, why would somebody do that? Because you got to understand something. There is a reason why businesses fail. Most times it is not necessarily because of low capital, although that does happen. It is not necessarily because the industry trends away. A lot of times it's because of personal human flaws. And that is what causes the business to lose money. So in number one, what I'm talking about is you got to, in order to achieve success, you got to prepare your family. And if you're not someone that's been a business owner before, if you've been a blue collar worker, if you've been a guy that goes in and punches a clock and you leave every day at 3 o'clock, and after that you're going fishing, going to hang out at the bar, going to hang with your friends, that is not the life of an entrepreneur when you're launching a business. That's the life of a successful business owner after they've launched the business. But that life is something that is very different than the life after just leaving a job. I'm sharing this way because when I'm talking about preparing your family, If you think that you're going to be able to transition into the cannabis industry and you are going to go on vacation 3 times a year, you're going to go to every football game, you're going to go to every one of your daughter's recitals, you're going to watch every baseball game of the season, you're going to travel and go to all these baseball parks across the country, you're going to do all of this stuff, you are insane. Because working a job requires 40 to 50 hours a week. Entrepreneurship requires the amount of time that is required in order for you to have a thriving business, pure and simple. So let's move on to number 2. Prepare to give up entertainment. Now, why do I say this? Because I've had people argue with me in the last boot camp that we did about why they couldn't do their homework for the program. And they said opening a dispensary was their dream. It was what they've been dreaming about. But you don't want to give up watching football for 12 hours on Sunday. You don't want to give up sitting in front of a television for 10 hours on Saturday. That right there, everyone has the same 24 hours in the day. Regardless of what you do for a living, regardless of your income level, regardless of your education level, regardless of your skin color, everyone has the same 24 hours in the day. But did you realize that some people become billionaires and some people end up dying broke depending on family members to take care of them? But they all had the same 24 hours. So what you're going to do with that 24 hours, that time that people dedicate to watching reality TV and power and all this kind of nonsense about other people's fictitious lives, that's the time that you're going to need to research about your own business. That's the time you're going to need to research about doing the things that are necessary for your company. Sometimes it may be time that you need to figure out what will actually be your company. So we're saying this from this perspective because, like I said, I'm not new to this. I'm the child of 2 entrepreneurs. I opened my first business when I was 14. You know, this is not easy. However, it is one of the most rewarding things that you will ever do in your life, to know that you are in control of your financial future and your destiny. If you're tired of somebody telling you when to wake up, you're tired of somebody telling you when you can go on vacation, even if it may be 2 or 3, but they tell you when you can go and how long you can go for. If you're tired of that, entrepreneurship may be the thing for you. But you got to understand, this ain't for punks. This ain't for weak people. This isn't for hard-headed people. All of those things will cost you to lose money, especially in the cannabis industry, because it is extremely competitive. And you'll hear from people firsthand today. So don't take my word for it. Just jot it down, and over the course of the day, you'll hear from some of these folks, and then you can decide for yourself whether it's real or not. So, you know, the entertainment is great, but that is a challenge because the average person watches about 50 hours of television a week. That's a lot of time. And what we're trying to do is get you in the mindset and the frame of mind to be able to transition, because there's going to be it's not like you're going to have a situation where you're working at Centera, or you're working at the shipyard, or you're working as a civil service contractor, and you decide, okay, on the 30th, I'm resigning from this job, and on the 1st, I'm opening up my cannabis business. No, to open up that cannabis business, there was a year of lead up to that. During that year of lead up, were you still working 40 hours a week somewhere else? Or had you put yourself in a position to be able to dedicate your time and energy to opening your business that year leading up? That's something that you personally have to decide, and there's ways to go about it. That's actually something that we talk about in depth in our boot camp training modules. But you got to realize that there's a reason why you see all these empty businesses. Even before the pandemic, there were a ton of empty office buildings and office space throughout the state, throughout Tidewater, Virginia, because businesses do go out of business. And if you did not know, even in the cannabis industry, businesses do go out of business. It's that simple. And the market will push you out of the industry if you suck at running a business. And that's why we keep saying preparation and learning is so important. There have been people that owned other retail clothing shops, coffee shops, and so forth. transitioned into cannabis, people that I've met in other parts of the country, and their business still went out of business. And they had business experience. Now, I'm not saying that to discourage you, by no way. But I want you to understand that a lot of times when those businesses went out of business is because the business owner wasn't listening to the people they had around them. They had yes people telling them everything they did was great rather than consultants and advisors to let them know when they're doing stupid shit. That's what you need. That's called a mastermind. That's a whole nother training subject that we cover with our members and during the boot camp. We'll talk more about that later on. But understand, let's get to number 3. Prepare to fight with having to choose daily between fun and work every day. Why am I saying this way? Because if you've never worked in an office, dealt with customers or suppliers, there will be growing pains. You'll have to learn to be patient if you're not patient. But the thing that you also got to remember is, when you are the person leading the show, you set the tone, you set the example. So you have to have a way of leading the business so that people are learning, because you can't do everything forever. If God forbid something should happen to you, you need a plan of succession. You need to have somebody prepared that can transition and step in there. So if you're choosing every day I'll get to that tomorrow. I'll get to that tomorrow. We'll do it next week. Next week comes, rainy days do come. Sometimes rainy days turn into monsoon months. But if you have been neglecting your business over a period of time, it will eventually show. And the way it typically shows is when your business starts hemorrhaging money, or you cannot maintain the business because you're not generating money. And there's usually a reason for that. So these are some things that, you'll hear people talk about from different perspectives of how they have worked within their own business. But I want you guys to understand that all of this stuff people have overcame to become very successful business people. I have friends and business associates I've known for years that have been through many of these things. That's why I'm sharing this, because I've seen this firsthand. Now, number 4, this is something personally myself, well as a lot of my family members. You got to get your personal health and relationships right. Now, let's talk about the relationship part. And I'm being very real here, y'all, because see, what you don't understand, if you have not gone into an application process, or if you have not gone into a negotiation process with somebody that has a checkbook in their jacket pocket that they could write a check for you with 5 or 6 zeros at the back end of it, that person is grilling you and evaluating everything about your life for them to decide if they want to write you a check for $500,000. And if you think that a person is going to be comfortable writing a check to somebody that if they were to go on just like a job and look on your Facebook page or your Instagram following, and it's you showing poor decision making, that's not good. And some of you may say, well, man, that doesn't matter what I do. I could smoke weed. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about baby mama drama. Because I know of someone that had a business which was a phenomenal business idea for growing cannabis in extreme heat. But this dude had 2 baby mamas that were dramatic because they saw that he was about to get into the cannabis industry out in Cali. And because they smelled money in the water, because the relationship was jacked up, because nobody could be mature enough to do what's necessary to do what's best for the children, it was a continuous ongoing thing. And they end up missing out on an opportunity for someone to give them $500,000 because they couldn't grow up to sit down and try and have a conversation explaining to the people in their life, this is what I'm trying to do. This is very important. This is how everyone benefits. That's called being mature. And the investor wants somebody that they can be confident in giving money to. Because if you sit down with an investor and you got all of that drama, or even worse, you sit down with an investor, you're talking about your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan, but when the investor sits down and looks at you, you look like you are in really poor health. or you talk about being in poor health, and you may be. This business may be an avenue for you to be able to get out of what you're currently doing to be able to do something that's better for your health. However, when you get that business, if you don't have the energy to work 50 hours a week, that's going to be a challenge. And when we talk about a work week at a job, we're talking about typically Monday to Friday. In this capacity, we could be talking 7 days a week, depending on where you live, what your locale puts in place in terms of rules and regulations. But even if you're only open, your store doors are open 5 days a week, those other 2 days, you need to make sure that you're ready for that next business day. That takes energy. That takes being able to stay up late and get up early. If you're the type of person that needs 10 hours of sleep, you need 8 to 10 hours of sleep regularly, entrepreneurship is going to be a challenge. Being a business owner is going to be a challenge in cannabis because of the competitive nature of it. So, when you hear me keep talking about competitive nature, let me talk about that. Because if you've never been in a competitive business environment or a competitive industry, just look at it like this. Just like if you were working for a company and you had a great job, there's always somebody that's willing to fill that slot because it's a great job. When it comes to the cannabis industry, everybody has seen movies, TV shows where they see D-boys making all the money and they think that's legal cannabis. Yes, you can make a good income and have a good quality of life in the cannabis industry. However, in the legal cannabis industry, you got to pay taxes. So, you have to be able to do the things necessary to sustain a business. And a lot of time that's going to involve just having the energy to do everything that's required that day before you go home. So personal health and relationships, you got to get that right, because after you get done with the business day, when you come home, if you have those two things jacked up, you're going to feel that after the business day, which makes it harder for the next business day. Okay, so I think I've hammered that enough. And if you have questions or concerns about that, you can call me at the office next week and I'll talk to you more about that. Number 5, got to get your credit right. And this is for a couple reasons. The purpose, first, you got to understand the purpose of credit. The whole purpose of credit is to show, a credit report is to show that it's a way of taking a person's buying habits and paying habits and financial stewardship and converting it into a number. That's all that it is. And I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying it makes sense, because in a lot of ways it does not. I was a mortgage banker for 11 years, long before the real estate crash. I was a guy that sold money to construction companies and the home builders to build custom homes. I've looked at thousands of credit reports, and I'm trying to tell you that the purpose of credit is to be able to buy something that you can't afford right now. So that's why it's looked at, okay, well, this tells me how a person has been able to pay their bills. And you got to understand the key to having good credit, and I hate that term good credit because it's always relative, because assets, having cash in the bank outweighs credit in a lot of ways in this day and age. But you got to understand that credit is a means of excluding you. If you don't do the things necessary to clean that up, it's an automatic checkbox. Okay, we can exclude them. And I'm not saying from the licensing process, I'm saying from a lot of things. Some jobs look at that, and that can keep you from getting jobs in the industry as well as jobs outside of cannabis. But why am I talking about getting your credit right? It's for establishing accounts. Because as a new business that does not have a track record, some companies may look at you and your pay history as a means of evaluating whether they should be comfortable loaning your business money or giving your business an account of some sort. Now, when I'm talking about loaning money, let me clarify that because of safe banking and everything, and I'll have people sending me a bunch of messages. I'm not talking about going into a bank to get a loan for opening a dispensary or opening a cultivation farm. I'm not talking about that. However, there are businesses that do not touch the plant that are eligible for traditional bank financing. That's something that you can look into. But when I'm talking about right here, getting your credit right, it's for establishing accounts when you get your business initially going. Because once you get those initial accounts going, then you're able to build upon that because it starts to establish a new pay history and credit history. I'm speaking from my own experience. When we formed the coalition, there were things that I wanted to do, but there was no track record. The coalition didn't exist before it was founded here with the state. So I had to basically put my name on the line and guarantee stuff so that businesses would be comfortable opening up an account to a business that didn't exist 30 days earlier. So that's just something that not everyone requires that, but that's something that you want to be mindful of. And the other thing is, depending on your business, like I said, it can facilitate securing financing, but the biggest thing that it shows in a quick view is how well you manage your money personally. That's really what it comes down to. It's a means of evaluating how well you manage your money. So, if you have been, and I'm not saying, and let me clarify this too, for those of you that are on here for the first time, we talk a lot about empowerment for people that have served time and dealt with the justice system, or I should say the legal system, for cannabis possession. I'm not saying those people should be excluded. I'm saying once you come out of that situation, one of the first things people need to do are jump on these things. And there's a lot of things that you can do to reestablish credit if you're in a bad situation, but that's a conversation for another time. And I've been thinking about doing a module about that for the membership, and getting some folks on with that, but that's something that we will talk more about down the road. Now, number 6, pay your taxes. Why am I saying this and talking about paying your taxes? First, it's required in order to get a mortgage, because to apply for a mortgage, you have to show typically 2 years of tax returns. That's showing that you actually have filed taxes. The bank doesn't want to loan you money for a mortgage on a home or an office building if you have not filed the taxes. And why would the institution feel that way? Because if you have not filed the taxes, they're concerned about a lien being put on that property from the federal government to get those taxes. The other thing that you got to remember is, in some states around the country, when you do your cannabis application, you're required to show tax filings. That's proof of your income. So if you're trying to take advantage of an equity program, for instance, and you're saying, and the program requires that a person cannot have made more than $40,000 the year before, but you're somebody that's fortunate that you're a very good plumber, you served time 20 years ago, but you made $90,000 last year. When you submit those tax returns, it's going to expose that, which will knock you out of that program. You need to find a different program. Now, what I just described is a hypothetical. I'm not saying that that is exactly set up right now. I'm using that as an example to convey the scenario so you have a better understanding of what I'm talking about here. But you want to get your tax situation, get your taxes paid before you get into the application process. Because I'm talking to some of my friends around the country that have had, after they got into the industry, they had friends that tried to follow suit. And, I've had conversations with them talking about their friends getting to the process, and then halfway through the process, it's time to submit the taxes. Now they're trying to get their taxes done, and they're trying to get it in some tax relief company to do it, and you need a CPA. This conversation today is about getting prepared, and this is something that you can do long in advance, way, way, way in advance of when you'll need it, and you can take care of that and get prepared. So please do what you need to do to settle up your taxes. If you have liens and things like that, those things don't always exclude you from application processes, because it all depends on how you have compartmentalized and addressed that issue. If it's an ongoing, lingering issue that hasn't been buttoned up, then that creates a situation where you got to take care of that. So remember, that's real important. So Write down your goals, because I'm finishing up here because my time is coming to an end. We're going to get ready for Dan. Now, why am I talking about write down your goals, and what am I talking about? I'm not talking about, yeah, I want to make $1 million. I want to drive a Bugatti. I want a Hermes bag. That's not what I'm talking about. Goals are measurable, but they're the thing that'll get you off your ass to go do what you need to do when you don't want to do it. That's really it. And I say write them down. Once you write them down, you need to share them with your kids and share them with your family. So I'll give you an example of some goals. It might be to have your business plan completed by Christmas. It might be to have found $20,000 in seed capital through family members and friends and have that in an escrow account. It might be to have read through a series of books that you may need to read to get the knowledge you need. It might be to have completed the VMCC boot camp that we are getting ready to run again. Whatever the goals may be, it's going to be different for each individual. But please, I'm talking about goals. Don't write down anything monetary. Don't write, oh, I want to make $100,000, blah, blah, blah. Money is the lowest level of motivation. And some of you are probably saying, what the hell is he talking about? Money is my motivation. Well, let me tell you what I have seen. I've seen someone living on somebody's couch without any money, and then I've seen them go to 6 months later making $25,000 a month consistently. That's a big change. But see, writing down your goals makes it possible, because it's what will keep you fueled and keep you passionate when you don't want to do what is necessary. And you're going to hear, if you ever participate in our boot camps or become a part of our membership, we talk a lot about commitment to yourself, commitment to your business. And that goals play a big part in that, because sometimes people write down stuff like, yeah, I want to go ahead and make $50,000, blah, blah, blah. Well, once they've made that $50,000, their motivation dies off. It's not like they say, yeah, I want to make $100,000 now. No, because they made 50 and they know what it took to make the 50. And if that's all the energy they want to give out, that's where their mind shifts to. That's why people get to a point where you hear them say they plateau. That's very common in business for a lot of people. And there's a reason for that. They don't have enough goals. If you're working with VMCC, you got to have stuff that you want to achieve and do for your family and loved ones beyond just buying some more material shit. Please don't talk to me about, yeah, I want to buy a band. Look, man, you don't have to wait to do that. If you're cool going into debt, you can go get you a car note. What we're trying to talk about is being cash rich, being liquid, not being in debt. Because if I have not said it today, I will say it now before my time runs out. Debt is dumb. Debt is dumb. And we explain why in our boot camps, and we explain to people how to get out of debt. Because as a business owner, if you go into this situation trying to open up a business, whether it's in cannabis or any other industry, and you got a bunch of debt, you got credit card bills, you got 2 or 3 car notes, you got a mortgage, you have a timeshare payment, you got a student loan payment, you have your kids' tuition payment, you got all of that, and then you want to go and transition from your job making $30,000 a year to having a chance to run a business. Man, you got to get rid of that debt. Because why am I saying that? Because when you get into the transition part to run a business as an entrepreneur, that debt will drive you insane. Because regardless of what happens with your business, good or bad, that car note still is going to expect to get paid. Your mortgage is still going to expect to get paid. Your landlord is still going to expect to get paid. They're not going to want to hear about, oh, I'm transitioning into a new business, I'm going to need some time. We're saying that can all be done without as much stress, but you have to do it and set it up way in advance so you have a transition period. And that's going to be different for everybody. If you don't want to do that with VMCC, that's completely fine. But understand it's going to be needed. Last, before we get ready for Dan and Breon, I just want to make sure that we have Dan and Ernest ready here. But number 8 is the most important thing on this page, really. Leaders are readers. If you are that person that does not like reading, entrepreneurship is going to be hell for you. I'm not saying you got to be a great reader. If you don't like reading, you need to get introduced to books on CD or books on audio download. But a lot of the information that I have listed above number 8, you wouldn't even need me for, because there's books covering all those things that you could go look up and read those books, and you wouldn't need VMCC or anybody else. But because a lot of people don't view books as a resource, they view them as a pain point, they miss out on a lot of information. You got to realize books are the best way of knowledge transfer. That's for over, thousands of years. It's the best way of knowledge transfer. And if you've ever been fortunate enough to sit down with a business owner that is a 7 or 8 figure business owner, if you've ever been fortunate enough to sit down with someone that has that true rags to riches story, that is not some athlete or some entertainer or something like that, but someone that has actually built a business from its concept to implementing it, to building it to the point where it provides that quality of life for them, they will tell you about numerous books they read that help them get to where they are. Reading books will give you a leg up on a lot of situations if you really, really, really utilize it correctly. Because if you use books and everything correctly, it just becomes an additional resource. Now, in regards to these books, I'm just going to talk about this. I'm not talking about sit down and try and read War and Peace in a weekend. I'm saying commit to just reading 10 pages a day. 10 pages a day, whether that takes you 10 minutes or an hour. Is it worth dedicating those 10 pages a day, however much time it takes, if it gets you to the point where you're able to pursue your dream and actually have your business? Because that is pretty simple, but you got to be willing to do it. Now, here's the other thing. As you go to the library, you go to the bookstore, or shoot, so many things are digital now, you can just have it downloaded to your phone. But as you start reading certain books, you're going to find out in those books that author refers to another book. I encourage you to write those additional things down and go seek out those books, because there's a reason why they put it in there. The other thing is that also, if you're not a big reader, most books nowadays come in audio form. Some still on CD. If you have access to a CD or DVD player, you can just pop it in your car. But many you can purchase downloads through Audible and companies like that, Amazon, or you can rent. So you can just rent the book just like you would check it out of the library. You can rent the audio, and you have the audio for 30 days. You listen to it over and over in your car, and you can take notes. Now, why am I talking about learning from audio and stuff like that in your car? Because if you are that person driving to work every day, you probably spend at least 20 minutes in the car a day going to and from work. If you look at Monday to Friday and you spend in 2 hours a day, that's 10 hours. So that's 10 hours a week that a person like yourself is able to get personal knowledge and training from a valuable resource who's the person that has written the book or the CD series that you're listening to, and you can benefit from that while you're just going back and forth to work. I'm trying to give you guys a lot of things about fixing your noodle. This right here is what prevents so many people from making $1 in business, because they don't recognize that they're the problem. And sometimes the only way people start to realize that they are the problem holding them back is by reading about someone else that had a similar situation, but then they had a breakthrough. And that breakthrough that you didn't know existed, and you wouldn't know it existed if you had not read that book or that biography or whatever it is that you're looking into. So I know some of you are like, man, I don't want to hear about this, but I'm trying to tell you. There's a gentleman that's going to be on later today, Tony Payton, friend of mine, and he is, I believe, on his 3rd or 4th cannabis business. He's owned several dispensaries. He's up in the Philly marketplace. You guys will hear from him a little bit later. understand this. When I was talking to him the other day, he said something that just blew me away. He said the application that they just turned in was 800 pages long. Think about what I just said. 800 pages. If you are turning in something and you haven't read all of those pages, or you don't have the team where you feel confident that all of those pages have been covered correctly, that could be detrimental to your business. You know, there are things that you as an individual are going to have to overcome. And the reason I'm saying it in that way is because no one's going to do it for you. You know, that's the unfortunate thing. There's a lot of stuff that you are going to have to get comfortable with doing, even though you're uncomfortable. If you don't like public speaking, how are you going to get an investor if you're not comfortable standing in front of a group of people to talk about your dream business? That's just the reality of doing business. So I'm trying to encourage you to start looking into some books. And if you go to our website, bmccequity.org, we have a resource tab at the top. There's a ton of articles and a list of books that we recommend, and that's always being updated and reposted. If you have not ever read Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice, you need to go get that book. If you are the person that has an issue with patience, or you have an issue with commitment, and I'm talking about commitment to yourself, not commitment in relationships, and discipline, you need to check out a book called Don't Eat the Marshmallow. You know, if you are someone that is thinking about transitioning from one profession to another, you know, Jim Rohn wrote a book, it's 10 chapters, it's called The Seasons of Life, and he breaks down the entrepreneurial experience into seasons of the year. And there's a lot of metaphorical stuff to it, but if you get a chance to read that book, a lot of those things about summer, winter, spring, and fall, you're going to shift your mindset into thinking about your money in that way. And it was very helpful for me, and it allowed me to go from here to here. Phenomenal book. So those are some things, you know, I'm a Jim Rohn fan. I own all of his books and CD series. As a business philosopher, I encourage you to check out Dennis Kimbrough, and there's many others, but understand that these things are going to be some things that are going to give you a leg up on the competition. And in this capacity, the competition I'm talking about is the other guy trying to get a license, because you got to realize that there's only going to be so many. And it's not like they're going to be available for the next 50 years. There's typically a window of time, and then that window of time expires, and then things change. So, guys, I hope this made sense. You know, you want to commit to achieving success, and, you know, you got to prepare your family, because they're going to watch you go through this. And you're going to need some people to tell you, hey, mom, hey, dad, you're doing a good thing. Keep at it. Don't give up, because you're going to get smacked around. It's not going to be easy. It is not going to be like walking in to City Hall and renewing your car registration or something like that. It is not going to be like opening up a frozen yogurt shop where there's all these templates and everything in place and everybody in the city office knows what to do. That is not going to be the case in cannabis, because it's a completely new industry and everyone is learning on the job because it's completely new. Number 3, you know, prepare to fight with having to choose. You know, fun. There will be plenty of fun for you once you have a thriving business. And when I'm talking about a thriving business, I'm not talking about you're making millions of dollars a month. I'm talking about you have a business that is consistently generating profit, is consistently generating revenue, so you have profit, and you don't have to be robbing Peter to pay Paul. You can do business projections. You can save money for your business and yourself. That is critical mass in business, and that's something that is real important, but it's hard to get to that without number 4, some health, because you're going to have energy. You're going to need energy to be able to do all those things that we've talked about. And, you know, getting the credit right is just something that you can start now if you need to, because you're going to need it down the road. So you don't have to wait. We can't keep waiting. You have to take the word wait out of your vocabulary. Pay your taxes. We beat that over the head. It's understandable because it's part of the application process with just about everything involving a license of some sort. Got to write down your goals so you see them every day, because if you're the only person in your household that knows why you want to enter this industry, you aren't ready yet. You're scared. You're worried about what people are going to say, and you got to get over that. Because let me tell you, majority of people out here in the state of Virginia have a preconceived idea about cannabis, and most of their preconceived ideas are wrong. And number 8, you got to get comfortable with reading. And if you were to go ahead and start researching book titles and things like that, you're going to end up finding out that a lot of the information that can help you, regardless of your business choice, you'll be able to find through books. So, understand that this is a very important thing, but I want to go ahead and transition because